Mick Jagger singing in the studio is like, I'm thinking, I know what this feels like. I know exactly what this is like. And you're pushing yourself and you're trying to get the best possible thing. And it's like an intensity there that you have to kind of like be very careful with when you're around someone doing that kind of thing, particularly someone who's as invested as he is.
That's the voice of The Cure's Robert Smith, a legendary frontman in his own right, with his own part to play on Foreign Tongues.
You can just tell he knew exactly what he wanted to get, and he was getting it. You know, that was the astonishing thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I try very hard to get exactly what's inside my head. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. And when you can't, it's very frustrating. He felt like he was very happy with what was going on. And Andrew is such a... he's very, very full on in the control room, Andrew White, in a fantastic way. He's incredibly enthusiastic. And you could see that Mick was really bouncing off him. You know, there was this, you know, people talk about energy and stuff, but it was, it was palpable, you know, the way he was, I mean, he's out there dancing as he's singing, you know, and I mean, performing basically, you know, there was no sense of like, this is a dry vocal. He was, you know, on his feet dancing, singing. It was yeah. And so sitting there, the other side, you know, like just a few feet away, it was actually quite an extraordinary experience, particularly the first time, because I wasn't expecting it at all.
On the final episode of Speaking in Tongues, we'll meet some of the musical collaborators on Foreign Tongues. From alt-rock icon Robert Smith.
There's only been a couple of times in my life when I've been stood in front of someone and felt slightly awed.
And there's a name on Foreign Tongues that seems to come almost entirely out of left field.
I come to the overdub session, you know, and it's just Andy and me, and there's this chap I'm seeing from the back in the long black coat and a lot of lipstick. And I'm going, oh, it's Robert Smith. What's he doing here?
I say this all the time about Robert Smith. People don't realize that he is a Pete Townsend level composer. He demos those songs and plays every part on the demos. There's a demo of Just Like Heaven that is him playing every single instrument, and it's sequenced out the way that the record you hear is today. And then he knows to get his amazing band on there, and then the parts develop. He is one of the all-time greats.
Cure frontman Robert Smith isn't necessarily who you'd expect to show up on a Stones album.
I grew up in the 60s, learning guitar and learning how to sing along to the Stones and the Beatles. So, yeah, I've always been a fan. I went to see him for the first time in 1976 at Earl's Court. I just turned 17, and yeah, a very memorable show it was. And I think I've been to see him a few times. The last time I saw him was actually on the 50th anniversary show at the O2, which was 2012, I think. Yeah, so they've always been there or thereabouts, you know, but particularly in the 60s and through into the 70s.
The story of how Robert ended up recording with his childhood hero is really good. And this podcast is the only place you'll hear it. So over to you, Robert.
Andrew Watt, the producer of the last Stones album, we have online conversations and phone conversations over the last few years, but we'd never met up. It never kind of worked out. Every time he'd ever sort of wash up in London with some big cheese or other, either I wasn't around or it just didn't seem the right time to kind of hang out with him. So there's one part of this which is funny. When Andrew first got in touch with me and said he was back in London with the Stones, his first invitation was to go out to lunch with Mick and Keith for Sunday lunch.
I should mention here that the rumors about Robert's nocturnal lifestyle are all true.
And I had to decline. So I said, I don't even know. I don't know what lunch is. I mean, I haven't had lunch since I was about 7 years old. So it's a bit too early in the day. And also, that was another. I thought I can't sit down for lunch with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. It would be absurd. So by declining that initial invitation, I thought to be honest, I thought I'd blown it. I thought, and afterwards, I was saying, various people were saying to me, why didn't you just say yes? Stay up all night, go to lunch. And I was thinking, So I thought I'll probably live to regret this. But as it turned out, I didn't. It was probably a good thing, because had I gone to lunch, I doubt if I'd been invited to the studio. But yeah, so last summer, or like late spring or early summer, he he got in touch again and said he was in London doing the next Stones album. And when it got nearer to the end of the session, was I interested in coming up and, finally grabbing that cold beer with him. So yeah, we made a date, and he was in Metropolis Studios finishing up, and he said that they'd pretty much done all the tracking and stuff, and it was just Mick was just left to pick up some vocal stuff, and there were bits and pieces they were doing. So he said they were tending to work Monday to Friday, knocking off on Friday night, and he was like left to his own devices through Saturday, Sunday, kind of doing, making sure everything was right from the week before. So it seemed like a good opportunity, so I headed into London at his behest, and on a Friday evening. He told me the day before, as he said, Mick might still be around, and I was like, that's okay. I mean, I know what it's like being in the studio, particularly when you're singing. The last thing you want is guests. It's really horrible. It sounds a bit miserable, but the dynamic and the sort of the atmosphere is kind of a really crucial part of what you're trying to get done. And the worst thing in the world is people just like sort of, bursting in and having a party when you're trying to do something. So I said I'd wait in the bar and wait until they were done, and then we could do whatever. And then I got there, and then one of the assistants came up and said, "Oh, Mick's happy for you to to come down." So I went down and walked into the control room, and through the glass there was Mick Jagger singing, which was not what I was expecting at all. So yeah, I sat there and had my own little Rolling Stones concert moment, and then he came in, and we just started chatting, and yeah, he made me feel very, very welcome, actually, very at home straight away. It was very kind of him. And then yeah, the evening just sort of developed, and he started playing me some of the songs and asking what I thought, and I don't know whether he was being kind or whether he was interested. And I had I was availing myself of the refreshments, and my tongue was loosening, and my suggestions were getting more and more absurd, I suspect, as they often do.
I've never met him before. I never met him. No, I never met him, which is, you'd think you'd run into each other, but there he was. Anyway, and then while you're here then, can you go and play a guitar riff?
And I was like, well, hang on. And he said, I play a bit of guitar. And I was like, well, I wasn't really prepared for it. And so much to everyone's astonishment, like Paul, the engineer, and Andrew, and a couple of assistants, I said, no, thanks. I can't do that. Which, just because I thought, well, like, hang on, I'm not, this was a long, long way from, I went up there expecting just to get drunk, really. I wasn't expecting to play on the Rolling Stones album. So, anyway, we carried on. I said, that's a great invitation, thank you, but I need to sort of think about it. So anyway, eventually he went off home, leaving me there, and then time elapsed, and I said to Andrew, "Oh, come on, then let's plug a guitar in, and I'll have a go at some of the songs." So I just started playing, and one thing led to another. I just started vibing my way through the Rolling Stones album, and I even started playing disco synth, I remember, at one point, and singing horn parts that I thought were missing, and so forth, and then it all sort of disappears into a haze, and I don't really remember how I got home or anything, but it was really, really good. It was really good fun, and I thought, well, nothing's going to come of that. I thought it was just a great experience. Glastonbury, I think, was the following weekend, actually, and I knew that I was going to be singing with Olivia Rodrigo, but I was desperate that it was a secret. So Andrew was saying, we're all going down to Glastonbury. You're quite welcome to join us and stuff. And I said, I'm not sure if I can make it. So anyway, the following weekend I did the Olivia Rodrigo duet, and then the next day I got this, angry call. You didn't tell us you were going to be there, and I was explaining the concept of a secret to him, which is sort of alien in the modern world, apparently. And he said, Mick wants you to come back up to the studio before we finish to do some singing. And I was like, what? So yeah, that week I headed up to Metropolis in London, and Mick was there finishing off the vocals. So once more I had another front row seat while he sang songs for me, which, I mean, it's his voice is absolutely astonishing, I have to say. I mean, I was blown away by it. And that's the first thing I said to him on the first evening I was up there. I really was genuinely taken aback at how powerful his voice is in real life. It's just absolutely amazing. Nothing to do with his age or anything. It's just the actual, and I suppose there is that thing, it's Mick Jagger singing, and you can't help but, there's something that's like, whoa, it's just it was a fabulous thing. So yeah, the idea of singing with him, I thinking that's such a great invitation. I'm not going to turn it down, but I felt very uncomfortable because, there's a handful of singers in the world who are kind of like they're the singers, and Mick Jagger's one of them. And I'm not being funny, but I'm really not. I kind of do my own thing, but whenever I do things with other people, I have to make sure that it's going to work. This is something that I hadn't really considered. So again, I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. What I'll do is I'll run through some of the songs, do some stuff, and you can just decide, what you like, what you don't like. If you don't like anything, it doesn't really bother me. Just being invited is enough for me. So yeah, I ran through a few things, and Andrew was, barking instructions at me, as he does in his laid-back American way.
He played on a couple of tunes, like sort of indie kind of licks, and then he sang on Lose You on the reply vocals. It was kind of fun. Yeah, it was good.
And then Mick left for home again. It was, and I think that was another Friday. I think it was the following Friday, and the Aussie thing was that weekend, and Andrew was part of that, and Chad from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who I'd never met, he suddenly appeared. Actually, he'd been asleep the whole time upstairs in a room in Metropolis, and suddenly materialised in the doorway as I was singing.
In case you were wondering, Chad plays drums on the Stones' new cover of Beautiful Delilah by Chuck Berry.
He was like, greeted me like we were long lost cousins, which I suppose we are, and yeah, so that night developed into we ended up just me and Andrew and him just bashing out stuff. Again, it just disappears into like a haze. The magic hour of 3 in the morning comes and goes, and after that I choose not to remember too much generally. But, and so it was a pretty full-on, very interesting couple of weeks. And to be honest, I didn't really think that it would make anything that I did would make it into the final mix. I'm not fishing for that. I just didn't think, I put enough thought into it, or that it was going to kind of work out, because it's not really Rolling Stones what I do. I didn't even bother asking Andrew if it was going to be part of the mix. So I thought, otherwise they'll have to lie to me. So yeah, that was another really lovely surprise when he sent me a copy of one of the songs. Said, listen, you're on the Rolling Stones album. I thought, immortality at last. I've made it. I come from a generation who they were it. They were the band.